2, 1. Okay, so all right, I guess we're rocking and rolling. So I'd like to welcome everybody to the Monday, April 27, 2020 meeting of the Sykesville Meeting Council. This meeting is taking place via Zoom.us teleconference. In order to give a public comment or to listen to the meeting, you can call 1-301-715-8592. The meeting ID is 828-0877-3013, and the password is 055303. You will not be able to enter the meeting. Well, we're already started, so that doesn't apply. But once you enter, you'll be placed on mute. If you'd like to make a public comment, please raise your hand by pressing *9. So again, you'll be joining by phone, and you can watch via CMC on the website or Facebook Live. So with that out of the way, I'd like to call the meeting to order, and we're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a brief moment of silence. Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
One nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right. And then a brief moment of silence. Okay. All right. Well, thank you all for joining. Our first item on the agenda is the consent agenda, which is the minutes from April 13th. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes? Is there any questions, comments, edits?
Motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the meeting minutes are passed. Thank you. All right. Our next item is a piece of unfinished business. This is for the public hearing on and to consider and discuss ordinance number 2020-04, disturbing the peace. So I'm guessing we just left this open because it's an ordinance. Is that correct, Joe?
That's right.
For public comment. So so I know, Carrie, you said somebody had raised your hand. Do you think it's for that, or do we know? How do we find out what those people raised their hand for?
Sorry about that. We will have to unmute them and ask them if we want to do that. Or we
Okay.
can just take all of them at once at the end, however you want to do it.
Well, I didn't know. What is the action item we're going to take on this? Is this to vote on this to approve it at this meeting?
This is final adoption. That's right.
Yeah, this is for final adoption. So if we adopt it, then come back, I guess we could come back to that. But is there any questions on this by anybody on the council?
Nope.
Then you want to make a motion to adopt the ordinance number 2020-04?
Do we want to unmute everyone so that if someone does want to ask a question regarding this particular ordinance before we put the motion on the table?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Probably not a bad idea to see if somebody has a comment on this. Can you unmute them, Carrie, and see if somebody has a comment on this particular? If not, then we can remute them and we'll go on to the next item.
Yep, I'll check with them now.
Okay.
Okay,
Hi, it's Julia.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's Julia. My comment was not on this issue.
Okay, thank you, Julia.
Okay, thank you. We'll come back. Anybody else? Or do we have any? That was it? Okay. All right. So does somebody want to make a motion?
I'll make that motion. Make a motion that ordinance 2020-04 be approved as presented.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, then that approves the ordinance number 2020-04 for disturbing the peace. Okay, and our next item of business is the introduction of ordinance number 2020-05, and this is for FY 2020 through 2021 budget. As everybody's aware, we had a budget meeting Wednesday to discuss some of the budget items, and I think we went through most of the stuff for council at that point. So we're going to introduce the budget tonight. This will carry over to the next meeting. So we're going to introduce this tonight, and then we would approve it at the next meeting. I think the only thing I think that I talked to Joe about is a couple of items that we wanted to maybe adjust as far as getting rid of some of the excess accounts and then maybe changing some of the reserve accounts and things. So we're going to work on some of that, and we'll have that proposal out to you before the adoption, I guess. But other than that, we're just introducing it tonight, correct, Joe?
That's right. So we'll introduce it tonight. Obviously, if there's any questions or carryover from the meeting we had last week, I can answer those tonight. But we will have a public hearing on May 11th, our next meeting.
Got it. Is there any more questions tonight from council on this item?
No.
Okay.
Hey, Mayor, I just had one question in reference to it. There was one item that I believe the town was going to add some additional language in reference to the public safety aspect for the town council chairs and table. I didn't see that in this proposal. If that could be added for the next proposal, that'd be appreciated. Thank you. That's it.
Okay, yeah. We'll update that. I think that might have fell off the radar a little bit, but we'll get that updated from their conversations. You remember that, Joe? We were talking that as being part of the public safety of the items, the safety improvements for council.
I do. And I think that was specific for the capital improvements plan, if I remember correctly. So we'll make sure that the additional language gets added.
Okay, great. All right, thanks for the reminder on that. Anything else before we move on to the next item? Anything else from that? Okay. All right, so our next item for the new business is the discussion of the small business micro grant proposals or proposal of $50,000, I think, to start. But if you want, I'll let Jeremiah, since you proposed this, do you want to take the floor on this and then go over?
I certainly can. I don't know if Joe had something that he wanted to share first. Do you want me to just jump in, Joe?
Yeah, you can do it. You can jump in. And again, I'll say this. Again, one of the reasons that this is on the agenda tonight really is for discussion purposes, and we wanted to gather some input from council so that if we do decide to move forward with some sort of grant proposal or some aspect of that, we wanted to make sure that we knew what objections or concerns or whatever the council members might have had, so that we can put together, I guess, a more focused plan. So again, this is a good jumping off point, and again, we appreciate all the information that Jeremiah has put together for this. So again, really, I'm hoping to get some feedback from council on how best to move forward. So with that, I'll turn it back over.
All right, thanks, Joe. There's, we all know that we're sitting kind of in an unprecedented time. The COVID-19 and coronavirus pandemic have definitely, affected, everywhere in the world, our nation, our state, our county, and of course our town. One of the things that in some research that I've done is that I found that there's some other towns in Maryland, namely Frederick and Thurmond, that have come up with micro grant programs, very similar to how Carroll County did as well. So there's different parameters and different amounts due to funding sizes and that sort of thing. But that's so in getting ready to put together this proposal, we're in extraordinary times. It seems like a time where, it calls for extraordinary measures. I will say that this is an unconventional thing. It's not the normal everyday occurrence that a town like us would be looking at doing something like this type of program. And it's with a lot of prudence and a lot of thought that I put this before the council for consideration. So the idea is a small business micro grant program. And putting together some of the background, there's some salient facts that I think are important for the council to consider. One of the things is that there's 74 total small businesses in our community. Julie with the DSC was able to do a poll, and I think you all have some of that information available, but I want to highlight it, some of the findings that came out of the report. One of the items that came out of the poll is that 92%, so let me be more clear in terms of who was polled. We had 25 of the 74 businesses respond for the poll, so about 1/3 of the businesses within our small businesses within our community. And of those, 92% of the businesses have stated that they have 50% loss or more of revenue. And of that body, 68% of the businesses have said that they've lost 75% or more of their revenue since the state has been under kind of a stay-at-home effort that's mandatory, and we're doing everything we can in our community to safeguard all the citizens. Another important thing that was there was a question was raised in reference to, how long do you have sustainability moving forward? And 60% of the businesses said that they think that they would be looking at potentially closing their doors if they didn't receive some kind of assistance within a 2 to 3 month window. And that number jumps up to 76% of the businesses in a 4 to 5 month time frame. And so that's some important background in reference to kind of contextualizing this issue for the community. So then, so I worked with the DSC in reference to coming up with a proposal. I also consulted with the economic manager in Frederick City to get kind of a lay of the land about how they actually did their program. And a lot of the actual nuts and bolts of the criteria and the proposal actually stems from their program as we move forward. Again, they had some different amounts of money, and I think a lot of this is up for debate amongst all of us in reference to, is this something that we're interested in doing or not? But just to get to kind of what the bottom line is. The proposal calls for, and I call it Small Business Resiliency Micro Grant Phase 1. Phase 1 would look to provide immediate assistance to the small businesses within our community, and we'd be looking to put $50,000 into a fund in order to help those small businesses. It's important to note that the purpose of the micro grant program is not necessarily to solve all the problems of these businesses, but essentially provide a bridge for us to be able to assist them from getting to work from where they are to hopefully sustainability once we get things back to a little bit normalcy moving forward. In the proposal that I'm putting forward, the grant awards would be up to $1,250 with no repayment due, would not be a loan. There are other programs that are out there that are loan programs. It would be limited to 1 award per business entity for Phase 1. I'll talk about a potential Phase 2 in a moment, but let me get to there. The eligible grant uses would be very similar to what we heard from the county. So it would be for building rent, mortgage payments, utilities, and payroll. And if you look again at another poll, so in that same poll that the DSC did, about 60% of the businesses that responded said that the biggest concern that they have is being able to pay rent within this time frame due to the loss of revenue. So the type of criteria for the eligible businesses that I'm putting forward, again, in this proposal is you must be a registered business entity in good standing with the state of Maryland. You must have a physical establishment within the town of Sykesville limits. Have no more than 15 employees as of March 1st, 2020. The reason that we use March 1st, 2020 is that predated the mandatory shutdown or stay-at-home efforts that are going on. You need to be engaged in activities currently regulated or impacted by COVID-19 Maryland state of emergency and have a license or permit associated with that. Demonstrate a loss of business revenue of 50% or more related to COVID-19. Have no pre-existing tax liens or legal judgments. And then the following entities would not be eligible. And again, this followed what Frederick City put together. So no home-based businesses, churches, nonprofit organizations, banks and financial institutions, investment real estate entities, food trucks, or government agencies. And of course, this criteria is really something that I'd like to talk about tonight. Is this the right criteria? Is it not the right criteria? I think that could be up for discussion if the council had interest in pursuing this. And then I get more into the nuts and bolts of how the application and review process would work. We would look at, similar to how others have been done, kind of a first in, first out process. And a way to do that, although there could be other ways, is by having the business owners email in their applications. We'd put the application online. We'd come up with a mailbox. And what you're seeing on the screen, it shows xxxx@sykesville.net, but that would be filled in with an actual name there or a box where you could send it in. And then the applications would be reviewed by the town staff. What the city of Frederick explained to me is that they've got a couple of people that are working pretty close to full time on this. They do have many more businesses than we do. But that's something, again, that's open for discussion. So that's phase one. Depending on if the council's interested in pursuing this, there's also discussion of a potential phase two. And so as part of a phase two, that's where there's, or phase one, right? Because anything can be kind of warped into phase one. It kind of depends on where we go with this. There is a grant that the DSC is willing to fill out. It's a matching grant. The application is due on April 29th. I don't have right in front of me what that is called, but as I understand, Julie might be on the phone, might be available in the discussion to be able to provide more specifics of that grant. But it's essentially a matching grant. As I understand, it's right around $50,000 that they're looking to get to essentially, again, help the businesses within our town. What I don't know are some of the timeframes associated with that grant. And so for me and the proposal that I'm putting forward, I'd be looking at carving out $50,000 or some number to assist with the businesses immediately. And then if the council thought it was, if we thought it was right to also look at a phase two, then we would hold funding we would hold other funding as well. So up to $100,000 that we'd be holding for this in the idea that DSC would be going to get that grant. As everybody on the council knows, not every grant do you get, right? You go for grants and sometimes you get them and sometimes you don't. As I understand, Julie is optimistic that we'd be able to do this. Now, if we were unable to get the grant, then that would still open itself up to a possible phase two of additional funding that the council could provide out to the small businesses if we held that to the side. In looking at our budget, it does appear as though that there are revenue streams to be able to cover this program. And I think Joe could help us out and assist us in terms of what that revenue stream is. So that's kind of a background, and I open it up for discussion, questions, or what have you from the council.
So I'd like to ask Julie a question, actually. I know you mentioned a few things there, Jeremiah, that I wrote down so that we could ask Julie, because she is, I see her picture here, she is on the call, on the meeting. So Julie, with respect to the grant opportunity, well, first, actually, let me backpedal. Maybe what we need to determine right now is what our what the council feels about a phase one, about a grant in the first place, whether it be as written here or in some sense, some semblance of a grant with the amount per business to be determined. But if we're in favor of a $50,000 bucket to pull from for a grant opportunity for each of those that would qualify, maybe we should start there and not get in the weeds about all of the criteria and eligibility. Would you believe that that would be a good way for us all to start, Mayor, where we could maybe just know where we're all coming from at this point?
Sure. Yeah. If you want to go down the line, I mean, we could start with you and then we'll go down the line and see what people's thoughts are. If you either support this concept or you have a different concept, how about we'll start with you and then we'll go down and let everybody share about that. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay, great. Cool. Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate it. I am 100% in support of definitely a non-payback, non-loan grant opportunity for our small businesses. I don't think any of us can deny that we need to do what's in the best interest of our residents, and a thriving Main Street is certainly indicative of a better quality of life for our residents. It offers conveniences of direct services. A thriving Main Street offers itself to increase property value for our residents, which, with respect to taxation and such, with our property values, we were able to actually maintain lower our taxes, right? Our tax, which is part of our conversation we had on Wednesday with our budget about property values increasing, and therefore, in order to keep things from going through the roof for our residents with taxation on their properties, we were able to keep that down by keeping the tax basis lower. But besides the thriving Main Street being, something that our residents, have tangible services at their fingertips, there's those oftentimes overlooked commodities of a flourishing business district, like a strong sense of hometown pride, sense of community that I think may have been lacking when I first moved here, when our Main Street wasn't thriving and when we had empty storefronts. I think it's been 4 years now with no vacancies in our storefronts. And I think we all have seen and benefited directly from that. So I am 100% in favor, and I'll yield to my fellow council members now.
Okay, who wants to go next?
I can go. I'll make it simple. I am definitely in favor of it, and we can deal with the specifics in more detail if everybody agrees.
Well, I'm currently not in favor of this form of this kind of funding. I do have some other ideas that would be budget neutral to the town and open to something a little bit different. But the way this is written right now, I have a page full of questions I could go through, but I don't want to get in the weeds of it. I'd like to do something a little bit different. So not in favor of this right now.
Okay. Who's up next, Leo or?
I'll go next. Yep. I'm fully in favor of this. I've been slightly involved in the background of this, but I've had a chance to review this along with what Frederick City did and obviously Carroll County did for Carroll County businesses, small businesses. The language of these documents flow pretty similarly with those. Our small businesses need help. Our Main Street needs help. We've touted for years now how we love our Main Street, we love our small businesses, and we're the best small town in America. And I think we need to back that up.
Okay, now Mark.
I'm in favor of this. It's classic Keynesian economics. We're in the middle of a crisis. We have a rainy day fund. It's not raining cats and dogs. It's raining hippopotamuses and elephants. We got to do something. I think the amount is measured. If we go to a second level, I might start to have concerns about a partial payback. But what this is I support. I have one objection. I'll do it real fast because it's simple. I think we need to go beyond marketing material and make it clear whatever you get will be published, because I think a lot of people are concerned in these kind of things in general. You heard about an airline that took the money from the government and then laid everyone off. They want to know who got it so they can say, yeah, I get it. It didn't go to the fat cats, is the words used. So I support it. Step 2 might be an issue, but it looks good, and I support it fully and think we should move forward and address other council members' concerns if we can.
Okay, so that's we got everybody, right? We didn't miss anybody. My pictures are small, so I'm just trying to make sure I'm going off memory. But so, and I appreciate Jeremiah looking into this. I mean, we've been working, Joe and I, thinking of ways to help the small businesses. It's tough. This is our first pandemic, so timing. You're waiting to see things, how things are unfolding. Of course, the federal government's doing things. They just had more funding today. And then, of course, the other programs from the county and stuff. So I was kind of hoping the town could come in and be the lender of last resort, so to speak. And I prefer, in the essence of protecting taxpayer dollars, to do it as a loan. I would like to do them a little bit bigger, actually, because I feel like $1,250 doesn't really, it's not going to save a business, right? If my business is going down for $1,250, I'm going to figure a way to get that money. I'm going to put it on a credit card. I'm going to charge whatever. I'm going to figure it out. So my thought was, why don't we do $2,500, do 20 of them and do them as like a loan? And I was thinking like a 3-year loan, no interest type of situation, something that we can get, because the town's willing to participate in the downside, right, with the business. We understand they're struggling for cash. So, but then in 2 or 3 years from now, when the town is going to be facing some significant downsides, I think it would be good to be able to get some of that money back, at that point. And let's face it, when the town's struggling and the business is doing good again, they're not all going to gather around a table and say, hey, let's get $2,500 each and send it up to the hill on Main Street and help out the town get through it. It's just not realistic. So, and then I was thinking, as far as the grant now, and this is, again, just thoughts I'm throwing out there, I'd rather do the loans over a 3-year, like it's free money, $2,500. You got 36 months, man. That should be simple. It's a no-brainer, and it gets you a little bit more money. We're not going to be able to help every business. It's important to note that Frederick, their budget is $140 million, right? Their budget. So it's and they only gave away about $92,000. I think 80 was from this program, and then they had some private donations, which I think we should also talk about, is trying to get some private money in here. So they've only were able to help 44 businesses total in their program. So we're not going to be able to help maybe every business, but can we make a bigger impact at $2,500? I think it makes a lot bigger difference for a small business. So, and then do we do the second piece? My thought was, do the second piece is $25,000, right, in a grant. Now we can talk about that as trying to get a match. We can, I'm not opposed to having that bigger. I do want to try to leverage the funds that Julie is accessing. So I would suggest we do $25,000 as a grant to put onto this. That way, the town's giving away $25,000. We can leverage at least another $25,000. And again, you can talk about, discussions on that number if you want. So then this total package would be $100,000 package if we did that, with the residents being made whole over those 3 years, by getting some money back. And the other aspect of this that I think leaves out, and it is important to note, I know I was able to work on the budget last year and we were able to get the rate down. Now this year we're keeping the rate the same, which essentially is a tax increase on people because of the constant yield rate, So one of the things that this does fail to leave out is really some relief for the actual residents of Sykesville who would be paying for the relief. So should we consider something else for the residents? I mean, part of me wants to say, hey, the residents are all struggling too. Should we do some other additional offset for the residential people as well? I don't know what that is. I mean, we talked about some, maybe we keep the constant yield tax rate in. It would be the easiest way to do it. I haven't been able to think in my head of a good way to do that. I'd love to be like, you get $100, but that's not real feasible. We'd have to do it as a rate or something. But so those are just my thoughts right now. I would like to do it as the first $50,000 as a loan program, 3 years, no interest. And then the grant we can talk about, I'm in favor of 25,000 to try to get a match. And we got to do it all at once because Julie's needs to get this application in by the 29th. So we can have further discussion on numbers and stuff.
So now would be a good time then maybe to ask Julie, for those of us who are not as informed as others, not just on the council, but also those that are listening and will be watching it back on Facebook or whatever. Julie, can you explain to us what it is you would require in the form of from the town? What would you require in order to put forth this application? And tell us a little bit more about the grant that you're wanting to apply for, the matching grant.
Thank you, Stacy. What we would need at this point is a letter of commitment for the amount of what Jeremiah described at wave 1, which is $50,000, which is the equivalent of the maximum of the matching funds that we would obtain from the state. And I strongly believe that it's the best way to run that program because I have been on those Maryland Main Street calls for a while now, and we're actually going to have another one on Wednesday to help us shape the type of applications that will be the most impactful for our small business. Because I do agree that it is best to give the largest possible amount of money to someone and also to serve as many businesses as possible. But I think we have reached a situation where a loan is not going to change anything. We need to take action with emergency measure, as Mark mentioned it. And I think a loan would not have the same impact. So if the town would be willing to provide a letter of commitment, and I think I heard enough support for it tonight, in the amount of $50,000, I would be able to complete the grant application and submit it by the deadline. And I would be very happy to provide the council with the minutes of the next Main Street meeting with the Maryland manager and other Maryland Main Street coordinator to find the best possible criteria in order to enroll and serve the most vulnerable of our businesses and to, have an action that will really relieve and save Main Street because that's where we are now.
So, Julie, I do have a question. Do you have a sense of what the process is for the grant? Like, how soon would we get the funding for? Like, how soon would we know if we were going to be able to be awarded the grant?
That's a very good question, Jeremiah. From our exchange, I've been going back and forth with them, and I've been, as I explained, Joe, being able to work out a situation when we will be able to leverage the money that will be spent from between now and the grant award that expected at the end of June to get the matching funds, and the money will be available soon after that. So if there is, let's say we go through with that grant, we get the letter of commitment, we get the grant. That means that by mid-July, we have the $100,000 to spend, and we are able to do something that's not a loan, but a mini grant of $2,500 to a large number of businesses. And then we can reassess later in the summer when we have learned our new normalcy, when we have learned the new rules. We can reassess for a loan, like if there will be never a shortage of need in this situation, but I don't think that going into a loan is something that will be helpful right now from my numerous conversations with many business owners.
So a follow-on, Julie, is that the end of June is still 2 months away. We're just about at the end of April. Soon we'll be into May.
Yes.
The data that you provided said that a lot of the businesses would have a very hard time if they didn't receive funding in a 2 to 3 month period. So 2 months to me is March and April. 3 months is May. So if we don't get the funding until June, how does that impact the business community? Are some of the businesses already beginning to shut down as a result of that? And the reason I bring this up is because, going down the grant path, which I think is actually a good path, provides funding, I would say, for a phase 2 type of opportunity. But it seems like, to me, the data is showing that businesses need help immediately. So I'm just interested in your perspective on that.
I completely agree with you. I think it's why that 50,000 answer tonight is so crucial and would need to be dispersed within the month of May. But I think that to be doing things properly, it's very important to collect what has been happening in surrounding municipalities that are about our size, that function the same way, and that have similar budgets. And we will have those information sometime this week. Then it would be very helpful to have a panel of people reviewing those criteria and making the best decision. And I think that would require the skill from more than just us. And it would be a important thing to select the member of this panel soon.
So go ahead, Al.
So, hey, Jeremiah, I got a couple questions for you. Just dealing with, I know you modeled this off the Frederick Grant Fund, and you mentioned, did you reach out to MML? And was there any other towns that was about our size that was doing this?
I did not reach out to MML, Al.
Where did you get Thurmont? I heard you mention Thurmont. That town is kind of like us. Did you even look at their grant or what they were doing? I just wasn't sure what they were doing.
So when I found out that Frederick was kind of, what they said was that all the different towns came to them as the model. I used their model, Al. And so the county went to Frederick. As I understand, Thurmont went to Frederick. And so based on their model, it's a relatively straightforward model. It's not, although the documentation can vary to prove a 50% loss in revenue, the criteria is fairly straightforward. Julie brings up a good point that, maybe this doesn't hit the mark exactly for our community. And by getting together, a group of people that, would be able to help guide us in developing the criteria, very open to that as part of this.
And Al, Carroll County's grant application looked almost exactly like this.
Yeah. So I was just wondering that was one of the things too, so I reached out to mainly the First Friday businesses, because those are the businesses that kind of come to the Friday end of the month meeting there. And I was able to get a hold of about 18 out of the 23 businesses. And I would say 16 of them have received some kind of funding that either through the Fed, the state, or the county. Now, not all of them have received it, but they've got a letter for it. I just want to put that out there. Everybody seemed in pretty good spirits and was hoping that, May or mid-May, things would be back open. Just want to put that out there.
So one question that came up, but Julie wanted to have another comment, so I'm going to let her comment. But I had one other question for Julie as well. So if this is for matching municipalities, my question is how much money is there available? And if there's only 3 of us giving money away out of the 157 municipalities, seems to me like we're like a no-brainer to get this money, correct? It's max 50,000. So can you share on that? And then can you unmute her, Carrie, so she can comment on her other comment?
I'm unmuted.
Okay.
Thank you. Good point. First off, another municipality is going through that is similar to ours. It's Mount Airy, and they also are using the Frederick model. Second off, we have been encouraged by the Maryland Main Street director of the program and the Department of Housing to submit those applications because they are the perfect application for a Maryland Improvement Program. This is the name of the grant. And because the time frame is really encouraging municipalities to partner with Main Street program to get it done. And finally, you're absolutely right. Not many Carroll County municipality, probably not the majority of the Maryland municipality, will be able to apply, which gives us a very good chance to get it. And I was encouraged to apply for the maximum amount, which is $50,000.
How much is available?
For that, it comes out of the same pot as the technical assistant grant and all the other grants that are part of the operating assistant grant from Maryland. So it's a large pot of money. So I could not tell you accurately which part goes to which. But it has been made clear by the Maryland program that they will pay a lot of attention to applications that are pertaining to a current crisis.
Now, could we use our 50,000 if that's what everybody agrees with as first wave, as phase one, and then when Julie gets the grants, hoping that that happens, that we can use that as phase two?
That would be the easiest way to do it. That would also show, and that's a very strong point for grant applications, the level of commitment of the applicant.
So if I'm hearing everything correctly, then Julie, it sounds like, and after hearing the majority of the council express their support, if what's necessary for you to have as a takeaway from this evening's meeting to use to get our application in for the grant through the Maryland Improvement Program grant, you need that by this evening, is at this point what we need to do, Joe, if I'm not mistaken, basically make a motion to have that letter of commitment drafted by yourself and signed by the mayor. Is that something we would need to do in order to get that to happen this evening in a timely fashion for Julie?
Well, I mean, if all we're talking about is a letter of commitment to basically apply for a grant and then match that grant if it's awarded, you know, we can do that pretty easily and then still move forward on May 11th or at a later meeting to decide specifically how that would be administered or what we're going to use that match for.
Okay, so that's actually the other thing that leads right to the other thing I wanted to say. It sounds like a meeting that's happening when, Julie, Wednesday?
Yes.
If a meeting is happening Wednesday amongst all of the other Main Street managers that are in the position to be putting in an application for these grant funds, perhaps then our goal for this evening would be to identify that, and I think we have, that there's a majority of us that would be in favor of that letter of commitment, and then allow Julie to meet with those other Main Street economic development coordinators. And then perhaps what we should do is identify a panel of, besides you, Joe, a staff member or two that you believe would be appropriate for a panel, along with Jeremiah. I'd like to be a part of the panel to review the findings that Julie could bring back, and that we could actually establish the criteria. Since I think we can't get in the weeds tonight, I don't think it's necessary without all the information that Julie might be able to provide to us for us to get into the weeds of all the criteria that are listed in Jeremiah's proposal that he states are up for negotiation amongst us. Let's wait till we get the information from Julie, take that to a smaller group of people, then put together from that information what it is that we would, as a group, collectively review and vote on as an ordinance. And obviously, because time is of the essence, I think that ordinance that this proposal that we're discussing this evening will eventually become, if voted by the majority, would need to be considered an emergency ordinance. And I'd like to actually make that motion this evening or now, put that motion on the table that this ordinance in question this evening would be considered an emergency ordinance that would allow us to move more quickly with respect to perhaps even calling a special meeting before the next meeting, which is already scheduled for 2 weeks from tonight. If it's not an emergency ordinance, we can't have a special meeting. And if it's not an emergency ordinance, then we have to wait, I think, 20 or 22 more days after the ratification of the ordinance, which couldn't take place until 2 weeks from tonight if it's not an emergency ordinance. So you can see on the calendar, we're looking at 22 days post May 6th, and we're already in June then. So I'd like to make a motion that we would call this ordinance an emergency ordinance, and that's the motion on the table unless we have more discussion about that.
Before we move to that, I would like to open the floor up for any public comment. So does anybody want to comment on this while we're right here where we are right now? Because I don't think we're quite there yet at deciding how to do the ordinance yet. But so we'll table that for a minute. Let's open up the floor. So Carrie, has anybody raised their hand?
Yes, we have two. We're going to start with last four digits of your phone number are 3810. You're unmuted. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Julia Spitz. I actually have a comment on the budget too, but I'll save that for later. I strongly suggest that the council have a public hearing on this issue since you're spending taxpayer money on this grant program if you move forward with it. In addition, I do not agree with the grant program. I would also agree with a loan program, no interest. I think it's very short-sighted to, at this point, be spending the town money when you're going to be coming into hard times yourselves. And I can list all kinds of things that are going to be coming down the pike as a result of all of this. You're also asking taxpayers who are currently on unemployment to be funding the small businesses, and that just seems contrary to me. I understand they're being paid unemployment, but it just goes against the grain to think that taxpayers would want to give a grant to small businesses when they're struggling themselves. So, like I said, if you want me to go through things, I'll go through them really quickly.
Oops. I am so sorry about that. I clicked the wrong button. Julia, you should still be there.
Okay. Recycling is now going to cost the town, I understand. Highway user revenue, we struggled to get that money back, and I can guarantee you it's going to be cut in half or more. We'll be lucky probably to get anything in that highway user revenue over the next few years. Stormwater fees are going to increase. Income tax revenue may very well decrease. You're going to have to pay Warfield trash rebate like you did for Raincliff. Additional police officer and public works for Warfield. And like I said, there's just any number of things. And the town was in bad shape when Leo got on the council with Frank and Scott and was in a lot of debt. And we struggled over the years and we've dug out of that debt, but it can very easily go right back to that same situation. I think you need to really look out for the town, and there's already been, taxpayers have been taxed federally, state, and county for all of this recovery, and I think there's been a great deal of overreach. That's it.
Okay, now we got another one, you said, Carrie?
Yes. Alrighty.
Hi, this is Bob Betts. I'm sitting next to Julia, who just spoke, but we are not sharing the same opinion. I just wanted to make 3 points. I do agree with what Julia was saying about the burden on our town people who are already struggling. But there's 3 big things. I'm very much against this whole thing. First one is we're a town, a government, not a charity. Americans are very generous. If our businesses need financial help, just put that out. Say, come on down, drop something in a jar. Otherwise, if the town's going to become part of the business of supporting businesses, then let's just write a budget line in next year's budget that says January 1st, every business gets $1,500 or $2,000 from the town. If that's not the right thing to do, this isn't. Second point, along the lines again of what Julia said, is that the town's already got a budget committed for certain purposes. You take this money out, we're going to have to raise taxes or something and put it back in later or delay something. And the third thing, I wasn't completely clear when the list was being said, but it seems like we're drawing lines around some businesses and not others. And that feels discriminatory to me. You know, why is it that a business that is struggling with brick and mortar downtown is entitled or deserving of money, whereas a home business is not, or particularly the church? The church is downtown. It's not a retail business, but they meet all the other qualifications. So why not a church? Why not the home businesses? So those are my three big points. And like Julie and other people have said, there's more that could be said, but I'll keep it short for the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
We have one more too.
Okay.
Already, you're live.
Hi, it's Frank Robert. Good to see all these shining faces up there. And at my day job, I'm working with churches going through the same situation. I think the idea of helping out our businesses downtown is awesome, since the government basically shut down the businesses. And now, so I think the government should be helping out. I like some sort of hybrid way of what Ian was thinking, the idea of some sort of payback, which you could always forgive later. Maybe you'd have 1%. So if they paid it back within 2 years, they'd only have to pay back 75% of it. You know, but you could always forgive it later on, but at least helps them, and it gives them some sort of situation to help out while they're in a time of need. We're working with churches right now, not just allowing them to do grants. I don't know why you're not letting nonprofits and churches, but that's another issue. But we're working with churches to provide lines of credit so they don't have to sell their investments when the stock market's low. But I think you guys got the right idea, just with some minor changes and things like that too. But you got the right track of the government trying to help out these businesses. How we go about doing it, I think there may be some ways to fine tune that a little bit too. But thank you for listening to me.
Okay. Do we have any more comments?
We do not know.
Okay. So I think
one just came in. I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, no, that's all good. Yep.
Second.
Okay.
After this person speaks, I have a question though.
Okay.
Gotcha. You are live, commenter. Hello? Maybe not.
You want to let them know what the last 4 digits of their number is, maybe, or?
Hi, it's Jen Elliott from Market Tavern. Sorry about that.
Okay,
can everybody hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
I just wanted to just say, as one of the small business owners on Main Street, time is of the essence. I would hate for us to go backwards. We've all been through a lot together as a business community over the last, 8 to 10 years. We went from, a downturn in the general small business Main Street economy to growing and growing and growing. And as Stacey said, we haven't had an empty storefront in 4 years. And it feels so good to be part of the Main Street community and all that we've grown together. And I would hate to see us go backwards. I know I'm struggling as a small business owner. I have received some funding, and that's great. I am upbeat because I don't have any other choice in the matter. I have to just keep pushing through. But any little bit helps. I know $1,250 doesn't sound like a lot to save a business, and maybe it won't, but it will go a long way to keep us going in the right direction and the right positive trajectory until we can get our footing and get this whole thing turned around. So I'll keep it short and sweet, but time is of the essence. Any little bit helps. And I really, really appreciate you guys considering this.
Okay. Anybody else? Do we have any more Carrie pending?
We do not, no.
Okay, well, wait a second just to see if to get the click in.
Carrie, there was a comment that came to all of us that could possibly be read aloud from Ellen Taylor. Did you see that?
It goes on
I
the
saw
chat.
that. Yeah. So, I mean, we can read it. It said basically it would be very difficult for small businesses to take out more loans. Small businesses got funding, but most of them are loans. And I'm not sure. So I do appreciate that comment. I'm not sure of all the specifics. Some of those loans go away depending on how long you pay for them. Like I think the Paycheck Protection Program goes away. So I appreciate the comment on that for sure. But that's why I was thinking like a 3-year. I mean, for me, 3 years, I'm a small business owner. I could get that money in 3 years pretty much. But I mean, that's my only fear with the whole grant of right up front is, the town participates in the downside, but then we don't participate in the upside. And
Ian, I'm not sure if anyone else is in the dark or gray on that. I'm not sure what you mean when you said that we would help the business district in the downtime and then they wouldn't be turning around and putting money up on the hill. Are you talking about the townhouse when you say on the hill? What are you referring to?
Yeah. I mean, right. So when the townhouse budgets, when our budgets do get hit with some of the things like Julia mentioned, some of those things where we're like, wow, our budget's we're dying, right? And we don't want to raise taxes, and the business community. I mean, and look, this is just it's just not. I mean, I'm not faulting them in any way whatsoever. But as a business owner, I'm not going to say to myself, oh, let me see if I can help the government by writing them a $2,500 check, to help them get back on their feet. I feel like we pay enough already. So we're never going to get that money back that way. So that's why I'm saying it'd be nice to help in this downturn, to get them some money, to help them, tide them over until they can get back on their feet, get business going again. And then 2 or 3 years from now, when businesses are booming again, hopefully, knock on wood, I mean, we're all hopeful, that we would be able to recoup the town funds. They would come back. Even the federal government's doing this. They're getting equity stakes in some of these bigger companies that they're giving money to, so you can participate in the upside again, So
right. The key word there, though, Ian, not to interrupt you for any other reason other than now we're comparing apples to oranges. So I mean, what the federal government is doing for these large corporations is not what we're talking about. I understand your position, and I think we all do.
Okay.
I guess at this point, because I mean, we could talk, and I don't mind that.
Julie has her hand raised. Sorry.
Thank you.
Okay, so Julie, yep, let's go ahead and did you unmute her?
Yes, real fast. And I just wanted to clarify something you said about this loan. I think it's very important to know the specific of things when we use them as arguments. And those loans, unfortunately, have forced most of the business owners to keep their employees paid to a certain amount when they are not able to operate. I'm not going to name names, but there's two, at least in this town, that have had to keep people on staff to just qualify for the loan. Then those people are paid a lesser amount that they would when they are employed or when they would be unemployed. The entire way the loan works is that you have to be spending a certain amount of the money that was loaned to you by using it for payroll and in a certain amount of time and to a certain point. Unfortunately, with people being out of work and being paid less than they would be, they are filing for unemployment. Therefore, the people that have asked for their loan to pay those employees, the loan will not be forgivable anymore. First off, they were never all forgivable, never, at no point. It was forgivable up to 70 or 80%. Now that is being questioned because unemployment is more favorable for certain employees than it is to stay at home and be paid very little by a business owner that is working out of a closed business. Those are solutions that are what they are, but they are not beneficial right now. And we need to complement them with measures that will allow those businesses to be able to pay those loan backs. And so that's very important to know. The second thing that's super important is I think that we're forgetting our tax work and what business are bringing to the town that then later on is able to relieve the residents. And I think that I wish I would know more, but for the little I know, I'm pretty sure that's the way it works. And I think that's something we need to keep in mind when making that decision. Thank you.
Mark, you said that you had a question.
Yes, it's clear that some people are no and some people are yes. So I have a question. What would it take to reach a compromise where everyone is satisfied and no one is particularly upset? What about we reduce the amount by a little bit for the giveaway, but we do it immediately, and then we immediately move to a no interest loan, so we could do something now because we have hit the iceberg, and discussing it for another week or two means we'll sink. Do something now and then do something later. So what would it take to reach an agreement where everyone would be satisfied, but everyone's not going to be happy? Could we reduce that amount and do it now and then make a loan so everybody feels a little better about both?
Here's what I think. I think that we started out this evening having already reviewed this documentation that was presented to us and prepped for our meeting tonight. We all have been giving this an extreme amount of thought prior to this evening. I have been talking to business owners for 3 weeks, first and foremost as a patron, secondly as a resident of this town, and thirdly as an elected official. And each and every one of them that I have spoken to have expressed things that have brought me great concern. So prior to this evening's meeting, I would hope to think that all of us that expressed ourselves in the beginning regarding whether or not we were in favor of offering a grant to our small business district and our small business owners, if anyone here has had a change of heart since that point in the meeting, then we need to express that. But getting in the weeds about the details of this proposal right now is not, it's not conducive. It's right now we need to know who's in favor and who is not. And if the majority believe that this is something that we need to do in the best interest of our town as it is right now, think about the fact what this town would look like if we lost Beck's, if we lost Market Tavern, if we lost our retail stores. Have we all put ourselves there? And then if we haven't, do that now, and then put yourself not as an elected official, but as a resident who has been benefiting from the direct benefits of those services that those establishments provide. And then think about the indirect benefit as we as residents are afforded by having a thriving Main Street. And then let's also think about how the tax revenues from those businesses that are incurred because of them being in business that come back to us. Let's talk about not having that. When I moved here in 2005, there were probably 5 to 6 large empty storefronts. And everybody on this meeting right now, because that I see here in the pictures, and everyone that has made the comments so far this evening lived here then. And they lived here and they know what it was like. And I would be hard pressed, I'm sure, to find anyone who wants it to be like that again. So we need to take from this meeting this evening whether or not we are here to fight for the vitality of our town as not just a business district, but as a community. And I don't think any of us can say no to wanting it to stay alive.
So I think we all want it to stay alive, Stacy. I just have different ideas, and I understand what you're saying. I mean, I personally kind of like the loan. I kind of like what Frank said, where if you pay it off a little early, it's only 75%. I'm a little uncomfortable with voting on $50,000 that I really don't like there's a lot of things I don't like about this. There's a lot of information I'd like before I say yes on it. I feel the same way about you do with the businesses, but I'd like to know what MML thinks about this, just because it's a whole conglomerate of small businesses. I'd like to look at a town that's a little bit smaller than us. I did not think Mount Airy went ahead with this. I know they were talking about it. Thurmont would be a good town to look at. And I would like some more public comment, really. I know we've only had 3 comments. I mean, I don't think it was really publicly mentioned out there that this is what we're considering. I mean, I know it said a mini grant on the thing, but like, you know how everybody is, nobody really pays attention. So that's where I'm coming from. Like I said, I got a list of questions here that we don't have to go in the weeds now, but that's just my opinion. So I'm going to still vote no on this. Just letting you know.
Okay. I feel like, and I said it once, so I'm going to say it one more time so we can move forward. And I'm going to make a motion that actually, I have a motion on the table already. I'm going to leave that one there. I would like to propose to the rest of the council at this point that we decide.
Can you hold on one second? Because Mark had his hand raised. I wanted to let
Absolutely.
him.
I'm so sorry. I didn't see that. Go ahead, Mark. I'm sorry.
I just don't want perfect to be the enemy of good. If we reduce this amount by a very small amount and get more unanimity and therefore more support, because I know of at least 2 people contacted me and said they're against it. I heard 2 people on the phone. There may be an undercurrent of, yes, we care about our downtown, but I don't want my money given away when I'm struggling, is what I'm hearing. And that's my point. If we could reach a balance in the middle that makes everyone happy, we'd all be there. We'd be able to fight together instead of each other. Can we reduce it a little bit and do it tonight?
Here's what I'm suggesting. We don't have to determine this evening what will be done specifically. If we are in favor of a figure of $50,000, which 5 of us already said we were when we started the meeting, then that will allow the meeting to happen amongst, it may even help to answer, and I would think it would help to answer maybe some of Councilmember Grassley's questions with respect to other towns and what they're doing, and people that are at towns that are more similar to ours, and allow that information to be shared. And then something that is based in those findings comes back to us, which then we can discuss and get in the weeds. There's no point in us trying to make decisions this evening on the details of a grant application or what have you. If we are in favor of a grant, the majority of us, and $50,000 is a majority vote of an amount that we're comfortable with, then the letter of commitment can be written. Then we'll come back together after the information that Julie will have to share and disseminate, so that something thoughtful amongst all of us can be decided upon. That's what I'm asking for.
Okay, hold on one second. We do have another. Debbie Scheller would like to comment. So Carrie, can you unmute her?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, as a business owner and a resident in town, I have a couple conflicting issues here. One is I see a good thing in doing it as a interest-free loan. I really don't see a negative to that. I think that would benefit both the employer, both the businesses and the town, understanding all the intricate aspects of that, but I really don't see a negative to that. I do have, as a resident, serious concerns about grant money being given out. And that is because of the tax, basis right now. Knowing people are unemployed, including employees of mine. There's a lot of other issues going on besides just, unemployment. There's, family issues. There's all kinds of things. And if we are all living in the same town having these same issues, I would not expect my neighbor, I would not expect my community to bail me out. Help me out, yes. And I think a good part of helping me out would be doing a interest-free loan. I think that's a very fair choice in this. So thank you.
Thank you. So, are there any other comments, Carrie, by the way?
Can Joe speak to the revenue side of this, please? I know that the concern that's been expressed thus far is that, the other cuts that we're going to be looking at as a result of the pandemic and unrelated, the highway revenues were a concern before. People aren't on the roads driving. I get all of that. Can Joe speak to where it is that we have a revenue for what it is we're proposing?
Well, I mean, again, the simplest answer is just looking at the reserve accounts that the town has. Now, if you wanted us to dig into current fiscal year budget and see what cuts could potentially be made to make up that difference, then we can certainly do that. But we have not done that yet. And I would be concerned with doing that in our current budget, just because we don't know exactly what revenues are going to be at the end of the fiscal year. So, again, you may be cutting something now, but if the revenues don't come in where we expect them to come in, then, it might not make any difference. So, if we move forward with any kind of program, it should be identified funding from our unrestricted reserve, and not looking at specifically trying to cut out of our current fiscal year budget.
But let me jump in there real quick, because the one thing nobody can predict, and this is what I heard on the conference call with the governor's staff, nobody can predict what the impact's going to be to state budgets yet, county budgets, and local budgets yet. Right now, the state is $2.8 billion out, and where we are, and that was as of last Friday. So we're nowhere near the end of this thing, and obviously it could go on for the whole year. So it's going to be, nobody knows what the future holds, is what I'm saying. So that's the only comment I wanted to make on that. But I guess so. We got a couple of issues. Stacy had brought up the one with the emergency ordinance, and I don't know that I don't feel that that's necessary, and I don't know that it would allow enough time to get some public input. That only really shortens things up by one meeting time frame. So
it shortens it by more than that, Mayor.
Yeah.
With regard to the emergency ordinance, I think you have, if May 11th is the target, you can make that determination on May 11th, unless I'm interpreting our charter wrong. And I know Dennis is on the call as well. If Dennis wanted to say anything about that, but I'm assuming you can do that at the meeting it's being proposed, as long as you advertise it as this is going to be an emergency ordinance that would be adopted on May 11th.
No, because if it gets adopted on the 11th, we've got to wait 20 calendar days before it can go into effect.
Not if it's an emergency ordinance.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So if we don't make an emergency ordinance, even if we don't call an emergency meeting, we're still looking at 20 days post next meeting.
So Joe, could you do me a favor, or maybe Dennis, could you walk through the differences between if we went through an emergency ordinance versus if we went through a normal process, just so that all the council members understand what the differences are and what the delta is? Based on what I read, I thought the difference would be as much as middle May of starting to get funds out versus middle June or late June. And so that is a significant difference in time based on the data that the DSC has provided thus far. So I don't know who can do that best, but if someone could help with that, that'd be appreciated, to make sure that my assumptions are correct. Thank you.
I will defer to Dennis if he doesn't mind.
Oh, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So a normal ordinance requires a first reader at a public meeting, and then can be adopted at the next meeting. And then there's a 20-day period before it becomes law. And that 20 days is really to allow for a challenge by referendum. An emergency ordinance may be introduced, adopted at the same meeting, and there is no period before it can become effective when adopted. So
there's no 20-day waiting period.
There's no 20-day.
In terms of the timeframes there, just playing it out, if we were to vote on this as a normal ordinance on May 11th, to open it up for public comment. Then we would do that on May 25th. We could actually vote on it. And then from May 25th until roughly June 15th, June 14th, somewhere in that ballpark, that would be 20 days out. And so that would be if it went a normal process. And if we decided to do the other way of an emergency ordinance, it's my understanding that we'd be able to vote on this on May 11th as an emergency ordinance. And we would be able to, if we chose, to fund it right away. Is that right, Dennis? Or did I get that second part wrong?
No, you could fund it right away.
Yeah. So the difference to me is May 11th or June 14th-ish.
Oh, okay. But the problem really is the devil in the details. Whatever the criteria for distribution and qualification, if you were to adopt the ordinance and not have that already prepared, then you have an implementation issue.
Yeah, and I would think it would be necessary to have all of that criteria worked out by May 11th. So if you're going to adopt an ordinance by emergency, everything would have to be included in that, and we would have to get it out to the public so that during that May 11th meeting, we could get as much public comment on it as possible.
Which is why I would be proposing that we name a member, at least one member of the council, at least to join Joe, and Joe identifies who on the staff, along with Julie Della Maria, to act as a panel to put together what it is that we would all be disseminated and be able to review prior to our next public meeting, where we could also get public comment. And at that point, if we decide tonight that it's an emergency ordinance, we could, if in agreement, establish at the next meeting where we would also get public comment. So if I'm not mistaken, does that all make sense, Dennis?
I'll rephrase what you're saying. You would like to propose that the next meeting, it be adopted as an emergency ordinance. And that gives you, you can tell everybody, we're going to have an emergency ordinance, so that tune in and participate in your public hearing then.
That is correct. And I believe that if the process from this evening, between this evening and the next meeting, whenever that meeting would be, whether it be scheduled for the 11th as it is now, or because if we agree that it's an emergency ordinance, we could actually call, if 5 of us agree, we could agree to call a special meeting, which would become the next public meeting, which we would be able to have disseminated whatever it is that the panel comes up with for us to discuss, gain public comment, receive public comment, and vote on, and then initiate and I guess the word would be enforce at that time. So it all comes down to whether or not a supermajority of us here this evening agree that this is considered an emergency ordinance. So my motion's still on the table.
One of the questions that I see the problem with this is doing this as an emergency ordinance doesn't take into consideration any public comments, because publics won't get a chance to comment until—
That's not true, Ian.
How are they? But you've already made up your mind. You're going to make a decision that night. What if stuff comes up at that meeting?
No. I said the opportunity for it to be approved would be there, because we will have presented the necessary information in the appropriate frame of time prior to whatever the next meeting date is, not just for our review, but for the public's review, so that the public can comment. And that would all be just as advertised as this evening's meeting was. That's the way it works.
Yeah, I think to Al's point, I don't think that people are going to be able to get their comments in time, and it's going to have the appearance of the decision's already been made. So I'm not in favor of that, but that's okay. Like you said, if there's a supermajority and you want to do it as an emergency ordinance, that'll be what it'll be. So I don't know. She had a motion on the floor to make this an emergency ordinance. Would you like to take a vote on that now?
I'd like to have more discussion in reference to the emergency ordinance, because it's a little bit confusing to me about what exactly we're saying. So as I understand it, we're looking at, there's a lot of details in this proposal. Let's say that down the road, right? The actual proposal that we'll actually move forward with. And there's been really good public comment that's come in tonight, and I've appreciated certainly all the council for what they've said as well. My understanding of what you're saying, Stacy, is that you're looking to have an emergency ordinance where essentially we're given the ability to vote on criteria, whenever that meeting happens. What we haven't decided is what is that criteria yet, including the amount of money, because that amount of money to me is actually an important piece of this. On April 29th, Julie needs to know she has a letter of commitment and she wants $50,000 or the maximum amount, which is right around that number. And if that's what we said earlier, is that we're looking at a $50,000 threshold. What we haven't talked about is that, okay, let's say that we're able to do that. Now we have a letter of commitment. What does that mean for what we can do immediately? That's still the confusing part to me. And maybe I'm just missing something.
Okay, so what I'm proposing is that there is a meeting taking place on Wednesday with Julie and other town, with other Main Street managers and coordinators of economic development amongst other municipalities here in Maryland, happening on Wednesday, with the sole purpose of discussing financial support for small businesses in the form of grant writing for this Maryland Improvement Program grant. I think that from that conversation will come a lot of direction that can be offered to us as a council to create the details of what it is that we're discussing this evening. And that that feedback, that input, and those that direction could then be put together in the form of something we can discuss as a council. It could be put together with a panel of people without, everyone that's on this meeting here this evening, to put together and to basically build upon and fine tune what it is that you have written.
I think everybody's going to want to have a say in that. I appreciate the
absolutely, absolutely.
But that's not going to happen if we just have a panel putting that together.
But the panel would bring forth in what would be considered to include information that nobody here at this table has at our disposal right now, so that it would be something that would lend itself to a successful grant application, so that our $50,000 that we're attempting to leverage for that grant to make it twice as much would be what it is that I think would be most favorable for us to double what it is that's available. So all I'm saying is let that information come, make this proposal, and let us then look at that, all of us, and say, no, we don't like that, but we do like this. Can we change that? And at least it's building on something that's coming from a good place with some good direction.
But again, I thought the whole point was to follow what like Frederick had already vetted out, what some other towns had already vetted out. I see like the criteria. Now you're going to be, it's just going to open up a whole nother set of criteria, but.
Well, no, it's going to fine tune the criteria so that it will be able to address the most number, the biggest amount of need for those in our business district. Right now, this is written very thoughtfully, but perhaps once all of the minds of like minds with respect to this information can come together and put something that is more thoughtful, so that then we're building off of something that's come from those that know. We don't know what we don't know, right? We all want to have input, but we also want to make sure that we're not missing something. So I don't think any of us are in a position here at this table. We don't have the background that we need and able to do something as thoughtful as we might after it's brought to us from those that know what they're doing. That's all.
So again, I appreciate that explanation, and by all means, the whole purpose of me putting a proposal forward was to get something on paper that we could react to as a group. I'm still a little confused in reference to the money amount. What Julie's working on to me is phase 2. And because we're not going to see those funds until the end of June, she needs a letter of commitment, 2 days from now. So that takes away that 50,000. So then the question I have is for the motion you have on the floor is, does that leave it up for negotiation about what's going to happen in the immediate? So could the immediate then be a loan or a grant? That's the question. That gets figured out by the panel or by whoever the right group of people are.
That shouldn't get figured out by the panel. That needs to get figured out by this council, because the council is just the one deciding about the disposition of town funds. So I mean, and quite frankly, I would rather have staff be working on the money side since it's town funds. So I'm leery about having others involved with the disposition of town funds. The town staff should be dealing with that based on whatever criteria we provide. So. That's
the criteria, though, is what we're discussing, Ian. The criteria.
Right. I'm just saying that, yeah, once the staff gets the criteria, we just give them the criteria, and then they make the determination of the disposition of the funds based on that criteria. Yeah.
No, absolutely. That's the cart ahead of the horse. We're just trying to get to the point where we all can agree that $50,000 is what the letter of intent will be written for, or commitment will be written for. And then beyond that, what's the process in order to get to a point where that $50,000 that the majority of us agrees we want to go to our small businesses, what's the process to get to that point? And that's where this is twofold. One, the letter of commitment, and two, can we please decide if this is an emergency ordinance? I mean, Al's laughing his butt off over there, but
it's okay.
Where are we?
Question though, we got to bring up that motion has not been seconded, so I do need a second if you want to consider that motion. So
I'm not done. I'm not quite done discussing it because it's still.
Oh, great. No, I'm just okay.
A little bit. And I'm sorry. Go ahead, Leo.
I think I know what Jeremiah is trying to say is that if we can do a letter of commitment today for Julie on Wednesday, does that leave us open down the road to still decide whether it's a grant or a loan?
Yes.
Is that accurate, Jeremiah?
Yes.
Thank you. Question.
Well, my understanding of the state grant program is that in order for it to qualify as matching funds, it would have to be some sort of grant program. A loan program would not therefore qualify.
Perfect.
And Julie, you can tell me if I'm wrong on that one.
But again, that's the whole reason I had the proposal the way I did with $50,000 in loans and $25,000 in grant right now. Like you could do that right away, and again, I think if people need the money, they're going to take the loan. It's 3 years. It's free money. I mean, you get the money for free. It's basically a checking account. Now, if what you're saying is really true, like, oh my God, I'm going to get kicked out of my unit if I don't have my rent, I'm going to take that loan deal, so it's free. It's like taking money out of your bank and putting it back in when you get it. And then you got 3 years to get it. I mean, if you can't make $2,500 in a small business in 3 years to replace your checking account, I mean, I'm not sure that that's a viable concept. And I don't think that's the reality. Like, I'm in a struggling small industry myself, and I totally understand all these facets. So I just don't see it to be. But so anyway, it allows us to help both. That's the reason I was trying to do that. But that's the only reason.
So now that we have the answer to the question that the $50,000 has to be a grant, that doesn't serve for anything that we can do in the immediate, and that's still a question that I guess I have. So, Stacy, you said there's two pieces. There's, emergency ordinance and letter of commitment. I think there's three pieces. So the third piece is there anything that we're willing to consider in the immediate? And that could be added in to the discussion that we have, if we have an emergency ordinance or whatever that emergency discussion or special meeting is, or whether or not we do it at the next meeting, however that works out. I think there's 3 pieces to this. That's the part that I want to clarify with the council.
Okay, so, right, I guess the first part is the first amount of money that you're talking about, right? The first amount of money that would be available.
That's right. And what we're interested in doing in terms of whether it's a grant or whether it's a loan. We've heard from the public, we've heard some from council members that there's interest in both ways, right? There's interest in helping the community. And so something that sits on the table for me is, okay, so maybe we move, it seems as though that there was support to move forward with the $50,000 for the letter of commitment. A question I guess I have for folks is there anything else that we're willing to do? Because that's not immediate. We won't see that until June. And so could we do a loan program immediately? Could we do a grant program immediately? That's the question that I have that sits on the table. And what is that dollar figure? Is it 25,000? Is it 50,000? What is it? Those are questions that I guess I have for the council.
So I got a couple questions too regarding the funding. Does it have to come from the town to be a matching fund for one thing? Like, to get the Mark's point is maybe like, can the DSC throw in 25,000 and we could throw in 25,000 to have 50,000? I'm just asking. That would seem like that's kind of what the DSC is there for. Just throwing that out there.
I'm going to first answer Jeremiah, and then I'll take your question. Jeremiah, if we were to go for that grant application, the matching amount, the investment from the town would be able to be dispersed between the time of the application is submitted to the time of the award. So there will be the $50,000 committed available for emergency use. The second portion, though, will not be available until the award. For the question about the DSC be able to put towards this 25,000, we just lost one of a major fundraiser. We lost the amount that it costed to put it together. We lost the amount that it cost us to reschedule it twice. We have seen zero revenue, but we have tried not to penalize our few employees. So we do not have 25,000 in hands. And we have been very conservative with the hope of still conducting business and operation on the model of the MOU we have signed without any other support. So I don't think we can stretch our rope any further than this.
Thank you for the answer.
So there you go, Jeremiah. I mean, the money could be spent, half of it right now. I guess the question becomes is, what if you don't get the grant? I mean, that's probably the only second half if the grant ever comes, but that's the risk you're going to take regardless, I guess.
Got it.
And then how fast can Joe implement whatever that criteria is? That's the other issue. We're not going to get to the criteria probably until sometime in, like I said, that's something we were wanting to look at as a council, whoever puts it together and works on it, but that's still.
Well, and again, I think that's kind of what, if we get direction tonight that, the town wants to move forward with, committing, X amount of dollars so that Julie can move forward with this grant application between now and May 11th, we can work on what that criteria is so that I know, what it is that we're looking at. I guess that was our problem all along was, we didn't know if the council was going to be supportive of moving forward with any dollar amount. It sounds like there is something that the town wants to do for downtown. It's just a matter of trying to determine exactly what that looks like. And that's what we can do over the next 2 weeks before the May 11th meeting.
So I actually would pose the question to Julie, if the meeting that you're planning on having on Wednesday would be the catalyst to beginning that process with staff, with Joe, with respect to the criteria. When would you be in a position to meet with Joe and said panel of staff and council representation to formulate those criteria. Julie.
I'll start working as soon as I hang up from the meeting.
So we could possibly have something. When I say we, I mean as a collective body, we as a council could potentially have something in hand for review that's been thoughtfully put together by yourself and Joe and staff as needed, and at least a representative of the council or whomever you all decide should be on this collective effort.
I'll throw out now, I think it's probably best if you just let staff and Julie work on the criteria.
Perfect.
That way everybody's a neutral party when you see the criteria that was put together. Yeah.
To be honest, I didn't want to slight Jeremiah, who had brought this to the table in the first place. So that's fine. So could we have something to review and digest by, let's say, Monday next week?
I certainly wouldn't see why not. Again, now the matter is, how quickly do you want to get it out to the public so that they can begin their review as well? And knowing full well that this council probably won't have an opportunity to get together and discuss it prior to also the public seeing it. And
so my proposition would be, if we can determine this as an emergency ordinance, then we could have a special meeting next week, which would be our first public discussion as a council of something that's been presented to us by Monday next week. Say we meet, have a special meeting on Thursday or Friday next week, if we can agree to that. And in prep for the regularly scheduled meeting for Monday, what is it? Did we just say the 11th?
May 11th.
Which would be a public comment. They will have had several days to review what's publicly disseminated in prep for the May 11th meeting, at which time we'll receive public comment and consider and discuss, and at that point, take a vote.
So I'll
and if it's an emergency ordinance, I'm so sorry, if it's an emergency ordinance and it is ratified, that $50,000 or said amount that we have yet to apparently agree to, which I thought we did when we started talking this evening, could then be disseminated according to staff review and dissemination. Now I'm done. Sorry, Jeremiah.
So Carrie, there's one person with their hand up that I'm seeing, and then I have something to say after that. I'm not sure if it's out of order to have them speak or not, but I would prefer that everyone gets a chance to speak.
Is there someone waiting to comment, Carrie?
There is, yes.
Okay, can you let that person comment?
Yes, let's see. Alrighty, you're live.
Okay, it's Julia again. If I'm understanding all of this rigmarole, what you're saying is you're going to vote this evening on the dollar amount, and it's going to have to be a grant if you do go that route in order to get the matching grant. So all you're talking about having public input into is the criteria of spending that money. Am I correct? And if so, I am not at all in agreement that the public should not have input into the dollar amount and whether the program should be a grant or a loan.
So Julia, the public comment would be on all of it. The fact is we could submit for this grant that we're speaking of as a matching grant. We could submit for that, and based on our commitment, and then that can all be undermined, obviously, if we do not vote on the 11th to move forward. But in absence of us agreeing this evening, that a majority of us agreeing this evening that $50,000 in the form of a grant is something we are prepared to commit in the form of a grant, then we can't even submit for an application for the matching grant to receive another 50. So yes, you are correct. The 50 needs to be a determined amount has to take place this evening for that letter of commitment. But no, we are not going to, on the 11th or a special meeting in between now and the 11th, move forward on anything and pass anything without the public comment. Now, is that clear?
Julia, I have a question. This is Mark Dyer. My question is this: are you wholly and irresolvably opposed to the spending of any money, as in, here's a bag of chips and it's stale, or are you objecting to the $50,000? Some people say it's too much. Others might say, I don't want a single penny spent. And I'm trying to gauge whether your objection is the amount of it or the conceptual, how dare you even try to give them a piece of old chewing gum?
Am I still unmuted? Can you hear me?
I can.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. As I stated initially, I am against the grant program. I'm okay with a loan program, but what I most am against is the public not having input into this process. And I find it hard to believe that if you vote tonight and issue a letter of commitment for $50,000, that you're going to then at the next meeting vote to overturn that. You've made a motion, you've passed something, you voted to commit $50,000. I almost think that's improper to think that you would overturn that.
Well, and I think that sends the wrong message for the grant. I think whatever, again, but I don't know. I don't know that you would go and pursue the grant application of the commitment for the funds.
Agreed.
Keep an eye on her.
My motion's still on the table. Do you guys have anything else to discuss this evening with respect to the motion? Is there a second?
I second the motion.
So which, just for clarification.
This is the only motion I've made, which is
This is for the
to determine
emergency-
this as an emergency ordinance. And thank you for allowing me to repeat it, Ian.
Okay. So that there's a motion on the floor. It's got a second to make this an emergency ordinance, which then would make it so that we're still not going to do that tonight. That would just be at the next meeting. The ordinance would be an emergency ordinance at that meeting, can be approved immediately. So
Stacy, I just want to know, did that motion include the $50,000?
No, this motion is to determine if this proposed ordinance here, this proposal, which will have to become an ordinance, that this would be considered an emergency ordinance. And so that would give us the opportunity to add a special meeting in between now and 2 weeks from now, if necessary, which I believe it is, so that we can discuss it, also allow public comment, and allow for public comment as needed the following week at our regularly scheduled meeting before any kind of voting would take place.
So then a question I guess I have is, how does Julie move forward with a letter of commitment if we don't include the letter of commitment now?
Because that's a separate issue, and I don't think a motion is needed. I thought when I first asked, and maybe I misunderstood, I asked Joe if a motion would be needed in order to get a letter of commitment written. We had all already established, and I wouldn't have asked it if we hadn't, 5 of us had established that we are interested in committing $50,000 in the form of a grant.
We'll need to take a vote on that because, we'll need to take a vote on whether or not there's 5 people that want to do this and who they are. So
that's fine. That's how we started. Who was. That's cool. If it's necessary for a letter of commitment, then let's do it. But the motion that's on the table now has been seconded.
Can we confirm that, Joe? Is that right? We do not need a motion on the letter of commitment?
Well,
I think we should have one.
Yeah, and I would probably agree here with Leo, is that the issue here is if you say we're gonna commit $50,000 to this grant, then if you get the grant, you would need to know that there's money somewhere that's been identified to put towards that grant. Now, we still have time to determine what we're going to use that money for. The worst case scenario is you don't determine what you can use that money for in the short term, and then once the grant is awarded, you can go through whatever the grant application says as well. Okay, this is what the $100,000 is going to be used for. But I think the council needs to be aware that if you apply for the grant, you are committing money. And then the alternative is if you get awarded that grant and decide that you've changed your mind and you don't want to do anything, you're basically giving the money back to the state and potentially jeopardizing future grant applications, because if you just didn't take money that they already awarded you, that could in fact put us into a bad light with the state with the grant awards in the future.
So then I'm not sure how to recall my second, but I'd like to second it with an amendment and have the amendment be that we also include the letter of intent for the grant.
So that actually has to be its own motion.
It's a separate motion. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So then I'm still seconding the first motion then, and I'll make a second motion in a minute.
Okay, so the motion on the floor is to consider this emergency legislation, and which will be an emergency ordinance. So we need to get a super majority for this. So all those in favor, all the ayes?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so we got Stacy, Jeremiah, Anna, Leo, and Mark, you're an aye?
Aye.
Okay, so it passes. Do you want it? Well, let me hold on a sec. Abstentions, and then any opposed?
Opposed?
And I'm going to oppose too. Okay, and then Jeremiah, you were saying you had another.
Yeah, I'd like to put a motion on the floor that we move forward and have the $50,000 with the letter of commitment, due to the fact it's not the direction that I'd normally go, but the time frame is Wednesday, and it's just an unfortunate time frame. If we could get an extension, I'd love that, but I don't think we can. So I'm going to put a motion on the floor that we move forward with a letter of commitment of $50,000.
And this is for a grant, strictly a grant.
That's correct.
Okay. And then, so does that motion get a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. So we have Stacy, Jeremiah, Leo, Anna, you're an aye?
No, not for 50.
Okay. And then Mark?
Aye.
Okay. So Mark, and then, so we have, and then any opposed?
Oppose?
Okay. Okay, and I'm opposed. And then Anna, are you opposed or abstaining?
I'm opposed to the amount.
Okay, well then that's opposed, right? Okay, so we got 3 opposed, 4 no abstentions. So the motion carries.
Because that didn't need to be a super
No,
majority.
that does not need to be a super majority. That just is, yep, got it. Okay, so the commitment is to take $50,000 for a matching grant application. And then I guess the next item to talk about, I'm not really, I guess, not in favor of another meeting in between this one just to determine, I don't know that it's necessary, quite frankly, but I don't think the public's going to participate if there's too many meetings and we're just talking about the schematics of it. I mean, so you can comment. What are your? I mean, I don't know.
Well, I don't know. I don't want to sound disrespectful, Ian, but I kind of feel like we need to pick a lane. Like first, we don't have an opportunity for the public to comment, and we won't have time to review and thoughtfully discuss this before we're in a position to have to decide because we're under a gun with time. And now it's too many meetings. So if you guys are fine with waiting until the 11th, since that's ultimately, or if we only need one meeting, then do we do it sooner so that whatever the end goal is, it's done sooner if that's what we reach. I don't know.
I want to make sure we do allow for the public comment at the emergency meeting on the 11th. But what I was getting at is I don't know that we need a special meeting to talk about the parameters, right? Because that's kind of what you were talking about before, is going to put together the parameters of this thing and then have a special meeting.
That was because you had said that we're all going to want to have say and input, and I 100% agree with that. on the criteria. If you think that that can be accomplished in one meeting and have public comment and all of us be able then to be in a position to vote in one.
At this point, why don't we just, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'll let you chime in on this, Jeremiah. Why don't we let the plan that you put forward dictate the criteria? Because that is the plan that Frederick used. I don't think we need to be tweaking the criteria a whole lot to get all these little nuances into this thing. I just don't think it's necessary. And you've already determined the amount of money. So, I mean, I don't see the point really of doing that. But
I agree with Ian. We were talking about having a special meeting Thursday or Friday, before the Monday meeting. It's so close to the Monday meeting. We just leave it at that.
Right.
So I'm down with that too, but I'm not in favor of all the criteria that's on this as it's written. So
Can I
go ahead, Ann?
That in Julie's meeting on Wednesday, if she comes up with some ideas or information that is not in the current criteria, that she brings up to staff and just let them know, hey, here's these points that we need to address that we need to address.
Yeah, so my intention was that we're getting weird feedback now. My intention was that we would bring this proposal, we would mark it up as appropriate for our community. I am fine with it being marked up by all council members as you deem appropriate. I'm fine with the business community chiming in or the DSC chiming in and providing that. I wonder if that's something that could be facilitated by the town, where the town could take all those markups as you deem appropriate and then push that back out to the council members for whenever we meet next.
Yeah, that's typically how the process would work. It's, we have a proposal, or at least an idea or a background of a proposal before us tonight. If there are specific changes that people would want to see to it, just based on your own opinion, then by all means forward that to staff so that we can start working on fine tuning it, just like you said. And then the same thing with the public. And again, this document is a public document now, so hopefully I'm sure it's flying around the public as we speak, so that they can provide comments as well. We'll wrangle those in as best we can, and given whatever information Julie can come up with the other Main Street managers, again, we'll try to get as clean a document as possible in front of you as far enough in advance as May 11th as we can, so that we can put as much out to the public as possible before you guys are asked to vote on it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, that sounds like a good idea to me. So I guess get all the comments to Joe. Joe can take public comment. I guess you can send it to Carrie, right? What's the email? We can shoot that out real quick.
I believe it's town@sykesville.net. That's
Yes, that's
town@sykesville.net. So if you're on the line and or you're watching this, you can send your comments to town@sykesville.net. And then Joe, you can gather up all these, and he can do a presentation. If some are the same, just list them all out, and I think it'll make it clear for us to be able to go through it at the meeting on the 11th.
Good.
Is there any other comment on this topic?
Can we also discuss possibly the loan that the mayor was also suggesting, and have that part of our discussion on Monday, the 11th as well?
I like that a lot.
I actually like that a lot as well.
Okay, so I mean, the loan component, have you thought about what that number would be? I don't, again, I guess do you want to decide that now, or do you want to wait and?
Well, see, so I don't even know how we would be able to not only come up with an amount without, I think some serious research, as was done with respect to this grant proposal, would need to be done with respect to any other type of financial support.
Well, I kind of agree. I mean, I think maybe it's a good idea to get through this grant piece and then look at the loan as a second package if needed. And that gives us some time to vet this out as well.
Thank you, Ian.
Yeah. Does that sound agreeable? I mean, I think that's a good idea. At least we'll get the emergency monies moving And then
To Anna's point, though, isn't it something that we could talk about as a separate item, whether it's May 11th or May, whatever the next meeting is after that? And then we at least have a conversation where we're starting to think about what does that look like. That would give the town staff some time to put together what they thought was correct and work with the appropriate stakeholder community. That way the town knows that this is something that we have interest in, and maybe they could be the ones that facilitate the discussions with whether it's MML, whether it's DSC, whether it's other, county municipalities or other state municipalities.
And businesses would also have an opportunity to choose. I mean, they can say, you know what, I'd rather go take that loan that's more money because that's going to do better. Or other businesses are going to say, no, I can't take that loan. I'd rather take the grant. And it gives them a chance to choose.
Joe, you're looking for an opportunity to excel, to do two things at once, right?
We're always doing more than one thing at a time.
So I mean, this is a walk in the park for you.
Well, at least he can do, to Jeremiah's point, at least he could start working on gathering up some information, I think, get it on the board. I think that's one of the things Jeremiah wanted to do with tonight, is get some help on the board. So get out the concept, Joe. We can start doing some research on that while we're working on the grant piece, and then we can subsequently kind of make a decision. I think because the loans seem to be, I guess people want the money that they can get on the grant first, right, and then the loan might be a phase 2 package. So does that sound good?
Yeah, we'll start getting to work on that.
Okay. All right. And then, so any more comment on this one? Okay. All right. So our next mayor and town council meeting is on Monday, May 11th, and this too will be a Zoom US meeting. As everyone knows, maybe not everyone doesn't know because I saw some stuff out. The spring cleanup day has been postponed, and a new date will be announced after the state of emergency has been lifted. And hopefully it's not too, if it gets too hot, we may have to put it off until the fall, but just out of the, workload. And then we still have some volunteer opportunities available on the Historic District Commission, the Spark, Police Auxiliary, and the ever important Crossing Guard. Although there's not a whole lot of kids crossing the street right now, but they will be hopefully in the fall. So maybe get that on board. Okay, staff updates. So we're at staff updates, Joe. I'll turn over to you.
Yeah, just a few quick things. And again, I know this is on everybody's mind, but since we are being broadcast, I just wanted to, give a little bit of appreciation to all of the members of the Public Works Department and Police Department. These guys have been showing up for work every single day during this event, and haven't had a single complaint, haven't had an issue with anything yet. These guys just show up every day and get to work. So again, we do really do appreciate all of the hard work that they continue to do.
Can I interject here that when all this, everybody, we're slinging money around because we're in trouble. Once everything calms down, I'd like us to look about a little pat on the back for everyone who's taking the risks that our people have.
Very good.
Yep. And just a second on Joe's comment. Thank you, Chief, and Derek, all the Public Works guys. We can't thank you enough for you guys stepping up. And I second Mark's comment. We'll certainly try to look at something. We've been thinking about it. We've just been figuring out what makes sense. So thank you.
Good. So then just a few quick updates. I don't know if everybody got the same email I got today, but the MML conference is going virtual this year. So there will be no travel to Ocean City. And then we are still working with our consultants on the master plan. So obviously May was going to be kind of our big kickoff month where we were going to try to have a lot of public comments and public participation about our master planning process. Obviously with all of the public meetings kind of shut down, that makes it a little more difficult. So we are still doing some things behind the scenes. One of the main things that we do want to get done is go ahead and establish that citizen advisory committee. So tomorrow, all of the council members, you will receive a list from me of potential names that we would like to get appointed to that committee. Nobody has actually been told they're going to be on it yet. So again, I don't want anybody to think that whenever you get this list, it's already set in stone. But I do want to get your input on those names to see if these are the folks that you want me to start reaching out to, so that we can get those appointments made, and then hopefully start getting to work on at least some of the background information on the master plan. And then hopefully by late summer or early fall, we can really dive into getting that update kicked off. So really, that's it. I know we already said happy birthday to Mark, but today is Mark Onheiser's birthday. So
I think he's gotten a year older since the beginning of the meeting.
Yeah, I know he's lost some more hair.
Well played, Grassley.
Happy birthday, Mark.
Joe, quick question.
Sure.
How much are we saving by the MML now going virtual?
I'd have to look at a specific number, but there was, I would say it's over $10,000 that we had earmarked for both registrations and potential travel for, between council and staff stays. So,
okay. So possible diversion of funds towards the grant.
It certainly could be, but like I said before, the revenues may not be as strong as we were hoping for this fiscal year. So sure. Even if we reallocate funding for, say, a grant program, doesn't necessarily mean the revenue is going to be there at the end of the year.
So Joe, another question on that: is the registration fee still the same?
They have not announced that yet. They've just said they're going virtual, so we're expecting to get some more information from them as soon as they have it ready.
Okay, thanks.
I would imagine not, but I don't want to commit MML to anything. But that's all I had. So if we want to go to the public safety report.
All right, Chief, you're up.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I'll keep it short and sweet for you guys tonight. I'm sure you'll appreciate that. The public safety report covers April 8th through April 21st. During that time, we had 340 total events. As you'll see, the majority of the events were patrol checks. Only 5 incident reports written during that period. So things are still fairly slow for us, although our officers are still doing their jobs and interacting with the public and residents when necessary and when need be. We'll entertain any questions you may have about any of the 5 incident reports. I know somebody's going to ask me about the crazy squirrel.
Any questions for Chief about the crazy squirrel?
Good.
I wanted to.
Sorry.
Any questions for that?
Yeah, just wanted to note, as you'll see, we've charged again more people with unlawfully entering the skate park. Thank goodness for Officer Kirkner, because he's the one that's actually done all 9 charges that have been placed against people that just don't seem to get the message that the skate park is closed for their safety while the lot's being paved, as well as for social distancing purposes. But again, people are still trying to skate.
So is there any other questions for the Chief? I just had one, I guess, question on 0078, Chief. There wasn't any details on that. Is that
right?
Okay? And
say again.
That was in the report. Let me see. Let me pull it up.
I think we discussed that one last time. That's the one.
Yeah, was that the one from last time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, EMS administered Narcan. Thankfully, the person made a recovery.
Okay. Have we been handing out the books? I know it's been a tough time. I'm really worried about the opioids right now, since the COVID-19 is kind of sucking the air out of the room for everything right now.
Sure.
But that
on every occasion that they can, they hand those booklets out. They're doing a great job with that.
All right, I really do appreciate that. Tell them, send my thank you for that. I'm trying to track that. We're supposed to have the opioid task force meeting in June. I'm not sure if that's still going to happen or not, but I'd like to be able to give them an update again on what kind of impact we're having, if any.
Will do.
Okay.
Yeah, the last thing I wanted to mention real briefly was we did do a soft, opening, for lack of a better term, of our Ring Neighbors app. I don't know if you noticed that, but we're getting very good feedback from the public. Since we're being taped right now, I did want to say if any of our residents would like to download that app. They can text "Stay Safe," STAYSAFE. That's "Stay Safe" with no space between "stay" and "safe" to 555-888. So they text "Stay Safe" to 555-888, and that will allow them to download the Ring Neighbors app. And they'll be able to get on and see some of the videos that's been shared and the comments between the public and the police department. It's a great social networking platform that deals primarily with public safety, and I think it's going to work out pretty well for the town.
That's awesome. So, and then how do people give you access to their Ring? What's the stuff?
They have to grant the access to us once they download the app. If they have a Ring or a Nest or even an Arlo camera, they'll see on there where they have to allow the police department to have access to that.
Yeah, that's good. So then everybody watching can see that too. So if you're seeing that and you want to help us out, it's a great network, like you said, and
awesome.
As long as it's not your inside cameras. How does it determine just for like one camera? Like, can you do that?
What do you mean in terms of?
Like, a lot of people have multi cameras. They might just want to give you like the front and the street view or something. I don't know. Is there a way to protect that?
I believe there is. They can set up whatever parameters they want with their system. But the bottom line is, if they're recording video and they want to allow us to use that, just like they could send it out to their other neighbors, they can also now allow the police department to have access to that video, which eliminates the need for us to have to go knocking door to door and asking for that video. They can automatically grant us access to it, and we can get it real quick. So it's a very valuable tool.
No, that's good stuff. Yeah, it's good. Okay. And then for anybody who hasn't tried it, I have that app, and it is pretty interesting. Sometimes you'll see people say there was a break-in, there's such and such, and they'll show the video and kind of gives you a heads up. So it's good to have.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Anything else for me?
Yep. Any other questions for the chief? Okay. All right. Well, thanks, Chief. Anything else?
Yes, sir. That's it. Thank you.
Okay. All right. And then council committee reports. I don't know if anybody, I know Al had said he had got some updates. So does anybody else have council committee reports? We'll start with you, Al, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, so I just wanted to let the council know that after 2 weeks ago, I reached out. We set up a meeting with Ed Rothstein with the merchants downtown. That went really well. We're having another one this Wednesday. It's kind of nice because it's like a town hall, but it's just for the Main Street businesses. They're not talking about a tree being down or parking or traffic. It's really good. It's a good 50 minutes to an hour. So that was about it. It was well received.
It's going to be 40 minutes this week.
No, I figured out the one I could use from work, so it should be a little bit longer. Thanks.
Okay. All right. And then, so anybody else who's up next?
I have two things, Mayor. So I just want to thank the chief and his team. There was one inquiry that's come in the last couple of weeks from Raincliff Homeowners Association. The chief and his team responded to the incident very quickly and got the matter resolved. So I wanted to say thank you. And then a separate issue, and we can talk about it at a different meeting in the future as well, is that I think you've all started to see the century signs that are on different folks' yards. There's others that are going up in the community as well for other schools, because not everyone goes to Century within the community. One thought that was raised to me by one of the citizens in our community, namely my wife, said, hey, would there be any interest in the town possibly orchestrating some sort of a drive-by celebration? Much the same as what we've done or what you might have seen as drive-by birthday parties due to where we are today with social distancing and all of that. So if there's any interest in the town doing something like that, I have another citizen in our community who would be willing to try to coordinate something like this, namely my daughter, who was at Century last year, graduated as a valedictorian, has done she's coordinated a lot of different things for the school and still has contacts there. So she could work with whoever in the town in order to set that up. And it'd be essentially, imagine a little parade of cars going around honking and saying congratulations to the seniors, especially if they're not allowed to go through some of the normal things that seniors get to do at this time of the year. And there's a number of them: graduation, prom, just so many different things that because of this pandemic that they're not able to do. This might be a small thing that the town could do in order to celebrate the folks that are graduating. So we don't need to talk about it now, but I wanted to bring it up for people to think about. And I already have volunteered to help with it.
That's awesome. So I think everybody will be in favor for getting out of the house, getting in their car, rolling down the window, screaming, driving through town, blowing the horns. So it'll be a fun time. Yeah. So we'll bring it up at the next meeting, maybe, if you can figure out some parameters.
Sounds good. Sorry, Chief, in advance. So.
All right. All right. Leo, did you want to go next?
Yeah, just real quick. The DSC did have their board meeting this past Monday. We're still working on the tax exemption for the DSC that got kicked back by the IRS, and we're working with the attorney to try and clear some of that up. So hopefully in the next few months that'll be taken care of. And we do still have openings for board members on the DSC. We had an application deadline of April 30th. We have not received a single application. So if anyone's interested in being on a board member of the DSC, please reach out to Julie. And on a separate note, talking about the drive-by honkings, feel free to drive by my house this Sunday afternoon for my granddaughter's 5th birthday. So appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Okay. All right. And then have you extended that that time frame for the board members? Or
we might have to. I'm sure we're going to have to.
Okay. All right. Okay. And then, all right. Is there anything from planning, Mark? Mark, can you hear me?
Sorry, I thought didn't think I was muted. No, nothing happened. We didn't have any meetings. Sorry.
Nope, it's all good. Okay, and then Anna, anything on the HDC?
No, we did not meet. There's no applications. We're not going to meet this week.
You got it. Okay, and then I've not had any meetings with the Gatehouse or the Colored Schoolhouse, so that things are kind of on hold there. I have been meeting through this platform with the Mayor's Weekly, and we've been talking about some things, just some of the stuff that we're talking about, things to help citizens, some things with telehealth that I had talked to Joe about. So there's a couple of other points I'll try to bring up at our next meeting. That our next meeting is this Wednesday. Of course, it's the same time. Al inadvertently scheduled it the same time as merchants meeting, so I'm going to try to participate in both somehow. But that's all I got for now. Is that everybody? Did we cover everybody? Oh, and then state
Spark has not met. For obvious reasons. So I have nothing to report along those lines. I did want to report that I represented the town at a Zoom meeting that was sponsored by Senator Hester and Commissioner Ed Rothstein, where both of those individuals, as well as Julie, spoke as part of COED, basically an opportunity to put together pull together resources from all over Carroll County with respect to needs related to the pandemic. Specifically, we're focusing on pop-up food pantries. And my battery's low, so I don't know if you can still see me or hear me, but that is what's happening.
Well, thank you. Thanks for sharing that. And thanks, Julie, again, for doing that, too. I know these efforts you've been taking have been huge for people to get help out. So I know that's something Ed's been passionate about. So thank you for doing that. You're back now, by the way, if there's anything else.
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you for sitting in on that. So, All right, I think that's all the council committee reports. Is there any more public comments this evening? I guess we're at that public comment stage here, so please alert the staff that you'd like to make a comment by pressing *9 to raise your hand, and then we'll be taking off mutes one at a time. Do we have?
We do
At least
have
one.
one. Yep.
All right, so can you unmute them?
Alrighty, they're unmuted. Go.
Yes, it's me again. It's Julia. So I tuned into the budget session, and I wanted to ask about the ASCAP fees. I think Anna brought it up. I don't understand why that is not being put in the budget any longer. Because it's my understanding it's my understanding we have to pay that fee, or the town has to pay that fee. Sorry, I still say we. Has to pay that fee for the concerts in the park for the musicians. The musicians don't pay that money. They're doing a service for the town, and we pay them a small stipend.
Yeah, my understanding of the ASCAP fee is that it's really for music that is piped into public buildings. So if you're providing it in a public atmosphere, that gives you the license to do those kinds of things. If we were having concerts, every day or at least once a week, then maybe there would be a reason for that. But I think for the limited amount of concerts that we have, and the fact that there's no music being piped publicly into any of the buildings to necessitate that license, there's not a reason to continue paying that fee.
I would look into that some more, because when I looked up, there's a separate fee for local governments, and I think it does classify as a public performance.
Yeah.
It says.
I mean, I've had lots of experience with this in other jurisdictions. Again, unless there's something different in Maryland that I don't know about. Again, I'm happy to look into it again if the council would like me to, and report back.
It'd be worth a double check, I guess, just to see. And
Sure.
it's still we, Julia. It's your money.
Hey, Joe, with that said, I know that downtown Sykesville Connection pipes music through Main Street. Is that part of that ASCAP, or?
I did ask that question when I first saw that in the budget, but I think the DSC has their own license for that music.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Julie.
Okay. Yeah. Well, so we'll double check on that, Julia, just so we can find out. Okay. Any other public comments? Okay. All right. Then I think we are at the end of this soiree. So we would need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second. Oh, we got 2 seconds. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Well, thank you all. Thank you, Joy, for joining us and all your input. Appreciate it. And we'll see you all next time.
Night, everybody.
Okay.
Good night.
Everyone. Thanks all.